Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mormonish. I'm Rebecca, and you might notice that it is like a girls' trip, right? That's kind of woo, woo. We should be in a limo or something. So I have two fantastic guests on today, both returning. You guys have seen both of them before. In fact, I will link their prior episodes in the show notes. So if you haven't, you can rewatch because we've had some fantastic discussions, and today is going to be no different. We have Lila. How are you today, Lila?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
Oh, fantastic. What I love about Lila is it's like, what, 10 o'clock at night, and I'm texting going, hey, I've got a really great guest tomorrow. Do you want to come on? She's like, of course. Same with our other guest,
Why
Steph,
not?
who you guys have recognized before. How are you today, Steph?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm here. I'm on time, like
You're
not
here.
Mormon
Yeah,
standard time. So I'm
that is
doing
half the
life
battle.
of the world.
And your background looks amazing. And Steph, too,
Thanks.
I'm like, hey, would you like to come on and bring this presentation with you? And she's like, sure, no problem. Because as we often do, that I and also Landon, we run the Good Book Club, right? For Post-Mormons. We've been doing it. We're in our 5th year. We have a conversation, a book meeting once a month, second Sunday, 10 a.m. We've been doing it consistently, which I'm super proud of, for 5 years. It's amazing. And we have members of the book club lead the discussion. So it's a different take, a different perspective, a different slide presentation each month. And sometimes the presentations are so good and the topic is so good that I'm like, we got to put this out onto Mormonish. So that was the case with Steph last month for our November book. And she's going to tell you all about it. I'm just like, we've got to do this again. And we're going to bring Lila in and discuss this. So before we get started with our topic and everything, just really quickly for our audience who may not know who you guys are, we'll start with Lila and then Steph, just a quick little, however long, just tell us a little bit about you, and then we will dive into our presentation and the slides. I think
Okay, well,
yeah.
my name's Lila Tueller. I am a friend of Rebecca's. We've done a few collabs.
Yeah.
I don't even know what to say. I'm a mom of a bunch of kids and 10 grandkids right now and counting, and post-Mormon.
Yeah.
I did do a Mormon story. I've been on RFM and Bill's podcast a few times. I love talking about anything and everything. So this is a great opportunity for me to learn and talk to Steph, because we've never met before. Yeah. So this will be fun for me.
It's going to be fun. And I have to say, Lila has sort of, has seen how the sausage is made her entire life because her dad was a general authority. So she has a really unique perspective on all of that, how that all works. So yeah, we appreciate that. So awesome. Okay, Steph, you're in the hot seat now.
Yeah, so I am a geriatric millennial post-Mormon in the Texas area. So I'm in the Bible Belt now, but I was raised in Utah. I am a nurse, but I also have, the wife and mother thing going on too. So my life has changed a lot, probably mostly internally since leaving the church. And Lila, I think your episode on Mormon stories might have been one of the first ones I ever listened to when I was exiting, now that I think about it. So I feel like famous adjacent. I have secret like podcasting dreams, but I can't like hold attention long enough to prep one. So this is, and I kind of stopped reading, like I didn't have time. And I also was like, if I'm going to read, I better read a church book. So jumping into the Good Book Club has been a real great way to change my habits. So I just love it. It brings out the nerd in me. I love it.
That's awesome. I think you're ready to podcast. You have a fantastic background. You've got the earphones. You look incredible. I think that we should. I think you should think about
You're ready.
I could talk all day long. If somebody else wants to do all the nitty gritty, I will show up. Exactly. Maybe on time. It'll be amazing.
On time-ish, that's right. No, and I agree with you on the Good Book Club, because it does kind of, I say force you, but in a good way. You put yourself in that system, and it's user-led. We vote on the books we want to read, and they're not Mormon books. Some are, but some aren't. A lot aren't, and it's just kind of through the lens of Mormonism, or how we were all raised. So we all kind of come from a similar place, different ages, different places in the world, and it's so interesting to discuss things from that perspective. So I'll put some links in the show notes if anybody is interested in joining. Again, it's all virtual, totally virtual, just a Zoom meeting once a month, and it's really fun. So our book in November, and Steph, if we can bring up the slides, that's the part about podcasting I hate the most, is the tech. Everybody knows that.
I'm clicking things.
Look at that. Oh, she's so good. She did.
I did it.
Amazing. Woo!
Yeah, I think it's darling.
And we didn't
Yeah.
even need a guy to help us, right? We have no guys on this podcast. So
I know.
yeah, so this was our book, and we're just going to turn it over to Steph. She was our discussion leader, and we're just going to kind of go through it again, only this time with input from myself and from Lila. But this was amazing, and I think it's a really good reminder as we enter the holiday season that this is a really important thing, and this is fantastic. So go ahead, Steph, take it away.
Great. So thank you. This book, yes, it's called Awe. I think it is extremely timely because in leaving, I know the church, I know that it was very hard for me to reconcile some of the deepest spiritual feelings and spiritual experiences that I had. That was very confusing. You know, how can the church not be true if I have these spiritual experiences to go back on? And then also moving forward, you know, if you're having a big Thanksgiving meal, it can be really hard to understand people who maybe have different beliefs than you now, or, you know, are staying in the church, but maybe they know certain things, and just understanding like, how can you still be comfortable in that? I know I've had that feeling. So there's a lot more to learn from Awe and this amazing professor and author, but that I thought was really, you know, important to us. So awe is kind of a generalized feeling that can be hard to define, but this lovely man with great hair
He
is
has
the guy who
fantastic hair.
he
I
does,
mean,
doesn't he?
look at that.
I know. Well, and my favorite part, because he was one of the consultants for Pixar's Inside Out. And I know I
I did
like
not
make
know
my
that.
kids watch that. And I'm like,
Yep.
see, this is your brain in puberty. Like, this is a problem. And he has helped kind of define that. So he's a brilliant guy, tons of studies, authored so many papers. He's a professor of psychology at UC Berkeley. Anyway, he studies so many wonderful things. So we'll keep moving along.
He just looks like a
So
nice guy. Doesn't he look
I
like a nice guy?
know.
He just does. And now that I know he's connected to Inside Out, which, you know, is a pivotal
Yeah.
movie for a lot of people. You know, you're watching a cartoon, you're like, why am I crying? This is a kid's cartoon. So good.
Is
I love it
he,
when you can learn things.
does he have anything to do with Mormonism? No?
No, not that I could find.
Mm-mm.
But he does study not necessarily religion itself, but he studies a lot of deep social issues, but feelings that are kind of hard to define
Yeah.
is a lot of his study.
Yeah, and
Which
usually a man, they're not very good at feelings. So that's kind of impressive.
maybe
Yeah.
that's why we like him. We're like, you get us. We love you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's really great. But we'll go back to the defining the feeling of awe is very, very difficult. So the basic definition is kind of this reverence. It's a diminishment of your individual self, and we'll define that a little bit more in just a minute. It can be also be a connection to the divine. That's where a lot of spirituality can come in, and a purpose to something beyond yourself. So I think that's where this idea of, you know, a greater power, a greater purpose comes into so many people's lives, no, you know, regardless of your religion. So I think we're going to talk a little bit about, sorry, is my menu popping up? I keep doing that. There we go.
I don't see it. It's fine.
You know, like, sorry, you're going to know all my icons, so that's okay. Anyway, so the first experiment, well, maybe not the first, but one of the really cool ones that they did is the Yosemite experiment. So this was actually done by different researchers. It wasn't done by Dr. I think it's Keltner. I say it wrong, but it wasn't done by him, but he was kind of part of it a little bit. But what they did is they had these researchers who were waiting in Yosemite National Park, which is serene. It is beautiful. I don't know if either one of you have been there. If you could kind of describe it. I haven't actually been to Yosemite.
Have you, Lila? I haven't.
I think I did when I was young, but I don't remember it very well. So
I've seen videos. I've seen like climbing videos. For some reason, I like to watch those, you know, El Capitan. I know I've never gone climbing in my life and never would, but I like to watch those, you know, and it's true. You're just like, oh my gosh, you know, even on video, it just kind of translates. Look at this. I got to put it on my bucket list now, because that does sound like an incredibly beautiful place.
Yeah. And I think this is relatable that these researchers decided to go somewhere that, you know, I think a lot of people frequented and learned a lot about, like during COVID. We all kind of went to national parks. So if you can kind of envision a serene national park, maybe not with all of the COVID crowds, because that kind of ruins the experiment, but, you know, less populated. And what the researchers had the subjects do is they said, please draw basically a self-portrait. And when they did that, the subjects drew themselves really small on the paper. Okay, so a little tiny person in this giant national park. They did the exact same thing, but it was in Fisherman's Wharf in where's that? San Francisco?
San Francisco.
Okay, which is amazing as well. Exciting restaurants, busyness,
Right.
you know, ships, and it's in and out, but it is busy. It is louder. There are more people. There's more going on. So two very different feelings. The subjects who drew themselves at Fisherman's Wharf drew themselves bigger. So just keep that in mind. You've got a little tiny person, and then you've got, you know, a great big self. So the self that they were drawing is kind of your individual self. I like to call it the survival self. It's something that we need instinctually. We need it to climb a corporate ladder. It's our hunter gatherer. It's go out into the world and compete, get the good grades, get the good job, because you've got to do that, right, in order to survive in our world. But the interesting thing is when you're in this moment of awe and you're at this Yosemite, you know, national park, you feel all of that competitive self kind of diminish and get smaller. So you're connected to something larger, and then vice versa. When you're in this busy, loud, very exciting place, you're kind of drawing yourself, that survival self is big, and you're really part of that competitive thing. I think it is really interesting to note that if you have your sole focus on this survival self, this competitiveness, this, you know, going out in the world, it leads to anxiety and rumination, depression, and also self-criticism, which I think makes sense. And I don't know if either of you have ever had like a feeling of awe, either in nature or something, or even a point in your life where maybe you kind of were a little misguided and your life was being led too much by this default survival self, where you're just like surviving and competing out in the world.
I think there's a reason when you hear people tell their post-Mormon story, a lot of them gravitate toward being outside to try to kind of recenter, you know, and to try to feel again or to try to sort things out. You hear this a lot where people say, and then, you know, I went on a hike or I stood on a mountain, you know, it's just kind of this recentering sense. And what you're describing here is exactly, I think, what they're experiencing. And I think you need to kind of recalibrate, and we'll talk about this later, what awe is, because when you're raised in the church all those decades, it's very prescribed for you. This is awe. This is what you feel. This is what it means. This is what you have to do because you felt it. I mean, you don't have any control. But when you know, step away from that and you're able to find awe on your own terms, that's something that's really different. And I think a lot of people, post-Mormons for the first time, are really overwhelmed by that. How many people have you heard just say, and I just started crying, you know, and I don't know why. You know, I had a friend who actually was facing a church court, and he didn't go. He didn't want to go. And he said, I just went on a hike and I just went out. I just gravitated and felt like I had to go out, you know. And that's what he did, you know, and he was on his way out of the church anyway, but they were going to, you know, do this discipline to him. And he just naturally felt led to go someplace where he could feel everything you're describing there. So, yeah, I think it's amazing. I think it's incredible. What do you think, Lila?
Yeah, I think I definitely can relate to this because I remember, I mean, we all have our moments where we felt the spirit, you know, and that those were our core moments as members that we could fall back on and say, oh, but I felt the spirit, so it must be true. You know, all the things that didn't make sense must be true because of that experience. And then when you are on the other side, you have to reframe that because you realize, yes, you did feel something, but was it what you made it to be? Because the church puts this narrative around it, right? When you feel this way, that means you're experiencing, it means the gospel's true. It means that Jesus and Heavenly Father are there. It means this. They tell you what it means. Instead of you feeling whatever it is that you're feeling, you're told this is what it means. And then you're able to say, no, you know what? I'm going to take back the meaning of that experience and determine that for myself. I'm going to decide what that really meant. And you don't get to tell me what it meant, you know, because I mean, honestly, I get that same feeling, what I would have called the spirit. Now I feel it independently of Mormonism. And so that tells me it has nothing to do with the church. It has to do with being a human and living on an amazing planet with beauty that's beyond description, as well as awful things. But you go to Yosemite or Moab or the Grand Canyon or Bryce or wherever, there's the awe that you feel there does make you feel small because you realize you're nothing. This is a beautiful creation, and you don't even know if it was created by God, but it's there. And that's the awe inspiration. That's the moment that you feel this connection and you realize that you're small. And then when you get into the world, like you said, Fisherman's Wharf, you have to get bigger or you'll to compete, right? Like you were saying, Steph. So yeah, I relate to all of this. This is really good stuff.
And then look at the second list, that all those things have been described by people that they feel them at church often. I felt every one of those things, very anxious over all kinds of things, kind of introspective, what's happening, depressed now that I look back, and especially self-criticism, because you're pretty much told it's not good enough and you've got to do more. So that's interesting to me to see that list, because yeah, I hear that described all the time by people. This is how I felt at church. Then I gaslight myself to say, I'm not feeling that, right? I'm not feeling it. I had a friend who would take a Valium every Sunday to try to get through those kinds of feelings. That's not healthy, right? That's not good. So yeah, this is a really eye-opening slide here, I think.
Well, and you're also talking about the conflict of your thoughts versus your emotions. And the religion definitely did hijack defining your emotions for you. It also defined your thoughts, but it's such an interesting concept that you used the thoughts that were given to you to then control your emotions, and you don't validate your own emotions. You listen to what you were preconditioned. It's just like this cycle, right? That you're just sitting in all the time. And it's very hard to break, and it's very hard to, kind of come out of. So yeah, but I think now we all understand like this concept, right? That you have this survival self, and it is essential. I mean, if you don't have that, you're not surviving. Like, you have to pay your bills. You have to produce in the world. You got to do some things. This is kind of just going over further the differences between that small self and then this person of awe, this connected to a greater good. So just more examples of, surviving competition or chasing success, seeking importance, climbing ladders. That is this survival self. But the opposite of that is the feeling of wonder, connection, creativity, open-mindedness, and also peace. Again, awe itself is a very complicated thing to define, and I think it's so different among each person. So I feel like at this point, if you can kind of think of any memory, I think of concerts, being moments with my family when I first got to hold my newborn, or great times with great friends. And then there were even some moments in church I can think of, and just that feeling, and however you want to define it, that's like the awe thing that you kind of have to cling to. So you were talking earlier about crying, how you burst into tears. And I always think of testimony meetings. And I'm a sympathy crier. So if somebody else is tearing up, I jump on. I don't sob, but I'll just be watery all day long.
Yeah, it's contagious.
It just is. Yeah. And I hate that. I'm not a cute crier, like I look like I got in a fight. It's not cute. So I've always kind of hated that. But the science behind it is that when you have an overwhelm of emotion, it stimulates your vagus nerve and then your seventh cranial nerve. And the reaction is that you cry. You can also cry if you've got something in your eye. Obviously, that's going to stimulate you to produce tears, and that's just going to come running down your face. So it's also, therapeutic. I know my mom always tried to tell me, like, you just feel so much better after you cry. And I do after I have, I'm done with the emotional hangover. Then I do feel better, but it's because it really is a release of those emotions. You get overwhelmed, you cry, and then there is this release and peace that comes back as a response to that overstimulation. Like, your body calms itself down. But yeah, I don't think you can define your spiritual experiences by whether or not you cried. And I definitely used to, because I thought, oh, that must mean I am feeling the spirit just so strongly. I mean, girls' camp, it was like, we hate each other, but in this moment, we are all best friends. Like, just because we're all sobbing together, and there was a huge benefit to that. But anyway, so that's
the
why we
pressure
cry.
to cry though is incredible
The
at church.
pressure.
And if you're not a person like okay, people call me a Vulcan. I am kind of a Vulcan. I'm not super emotional until I am, and then I am, right? You can't turn it off. But I always was so uncomfortable with people crying at church. It was so awkward when, like, my mom would bear her testimony back in the days when you'd pass the mic around. I was just cringing because she'd get emotional. I could not stand it. One time I was asked to be in a readers theater of the Women of the Bible, right? This is for Relief Society. So we all like put a towel on our head. It was Christmas time, and they go through all the women in Jesus's life, right? And they go, you stand at the end, right? I was replacing somebody and I don't know how to say no. So I'm like, sure. And they hand me this script. So they're going down the line, and, it's all the, Mary, Martha, it's Elizabeth, it's not Mary, it's Martha, and everybody. I was Mary, what it turned out to be at the end. So everybody's crying as they're reading their part, going down the line and getting more and more hysterical, right? Because it's the Bible and it's Jesus. And I realized, looking at it, oh my God, I'm the big payoff. I'm the moment. I'm the mother of Jesus. I'm supposed to cry more than any of them when I read this. And I don't do that. So I just kind of went, I'm Mary. I'm Mary. It was such a big letdown to everybody, because everybody else had just been, I'm sorry, as his, handmaid. It was hilarious. And I could see it coming down toward me. I'm like, oh my God. Okay. I don't know how to, because I don't cry. But I was always really off-put at church, and I felt like I didn't belong because I don't cry, and I couldn't cry, and I didn't understand why the people were crying over nothing. I did not get it. So I don't know. Were you a crier, Lila?
Sometimes
like,
I can be. But I'm not. I had a friend who was a crier. I'm nothing like her. So I'm in the middle somewhere, because she cried every day about something.
Yeah.
But I get it. And the pressure to cry, like girls' camp, they would create these scenarios where they wanted us to feel the Spirit and then write about it in our journal or something, or bear our testimony. And we'd sit around the fire and everyone would go around the circle and bear your testimony, or go out into the woods and take 20 minutes of silence and write about it, what you felt. And it was like they wanted so badly to sort of co-op our experience with the Spirit. It was so manipulative when I think back on it.
Yeah.
If we're not feeling it on our own, don't try to create it. Don't try to manufacture it for us. It's because we're not feeling it, and there's a reason why we're not feeling it, so and kids are emotional when they're in their teens, all the hormones and everything. And I feel like they used that youth and that situation of us, on our periods or whatever, to their advantage. We're going to have this, this forced upon you testimony meeting.
Yeah.
I just didn't like that.
They're still doing it. I just read about a youth conference where it was out in the Lehigh area, and beautiful nature. They wanted the kids to walk on this path through nature. However, they put headphones on the kids. They set up screens run by generators showing pictures of Mormonism. And in your ears, in the headphones, were the whispered words of church leaders. And then it was all lit. And they had you walk down the path. So you're outside, you're feeling, the feelings from being outside, and it's dark, but then you're seeing the screens and you're hearing the whispered words. And talk about manipulative. Control. Yeah.
Yeah. That's coercive. That is freaking weird. That is.
And then journal writing at the end. Then you sit down and you write all your feelings. And then if you're having problems later, they're like, well, don't you remember how you felt? Don't you remember that? You better go read that, because that was real. No, it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
No, mind control. They've got to get us while we're in our youth.
Yeah.
To just lock us in. Mm-hmm. Anyway, sorry.
No, it's great. I think it's interesting how bluntly you can say like that it's mind control, because I'll admit, while I hear, that they've got the sounds going and that whole thing does give me the heebie-jeebies, but I'll fully admit that, if I'd been put in that situation, I was very like, do the right thing. I would have gone in mentally 110%.
You would have thought it was really cool, probably.
Probably. And if I was a leader of that, I probably would have thought I'm a genius. Like I got all these kids to feel the spirit. Like genuinely, like you evoke an emotion that you want out of these kids. And we don't think about, well, should they feel that? Should we be forcing this on them? Should we be doing that? Should we make them feel this way? And that's just not even a consideration. So
No, not at
yeah,
all.
but if you can evoke emotion, if you can evoke feelings of awe, there is a biological connection to that, to your emotions that you're gonna then have like your hooks in people. I don't know. This science is kind of new, so I don't really know how aware like the church or leaders, like I know myself as a leader, like I didn't know that that's what I was doing, so I don't think there's a huge awareness necessarily of exactly what they're doing. But yeah, it is definitely manipulative to take these emotions. And I think the experience that this reminded me of, and one of the hardest ones I had to reconcile when I left, was my first time in the temple was a horrible experience, like many people's. I didn't give myself mental permission to actually ever verbalize to anyone how weird I thought it was. I didn't even let myself have that thought. But I realize now I felt it. I was in a panic attack and like dissociated the entire time. It started out bad in the dressing room because my bag slid off the counter and with my little apron and all that, and it slid onto the floor. And I had people who were like all over me, like, don't you disrespect that, pick it up. And so I was just freaking out. And it was this pressure to perform, right? I knew there was some part where I was going to have to do something and I better darn well do it right. So the entire time, I'm like watching this really weird video with a dude pretending to be Satan, which that was odd, and not understanding how they ever thought that this was good cinema. Like it was horrible. And then, but at the very end, I was engaged, of course. I was getting married 3 days later, and I got to, go through the veil, and my husband is holding my hand because he represents his savior after death, pulling me, to the other side. And when I got to that other side, I just sobbed. Mm-hmm. And I'm a sympathy tearer. I will tear up, but I'm not a like crier myself. Like I can hold that together. But I just could not reconcile that for the longest time. And this concept of awe really helped me kind of figure that out. So now we know that crying is an overwhelm of emotion, and you kind of got to examine why. Why are you having that?
And so you didn't recognize that was a fight or flight panic attack kind of a cry. You thought it was a spiritual experience. I mean, that's the thing. When you talk about co-opting, Lila, that's exactly what you mean. You were having a panic attack. That sounds like exactly what happened to me, and I didn't recognize it till years later. And that's, of course, why you're just completely breaking down. But you think it's spiritual. And I'm sure your fiance thought, oh, she's having an incredible spiritual experience.
Well, that's a funny story. Because he's got his own he's been diagnosed with like the religious abuse. That's not my story.
Yeah.
So he was hating every second of it too, but neither one of us for 25 years could tell each other. So it was this big secret. Like, anyway, that's a longer story.
So many couples like that. Yeah, honestly.
Right? Yeah. So he was kind of like horrified at the whole ordeal and kind of felt bad he was putting me through that anyway, but we never talked about it. Like it was never even a thing. He thought I was just, wow, she's really into this. Like, okay, good for her. So he was just trying to be supportive, and he was trying to make himself enjoy it. He was trying to, be the good boy. So anyway, but this other concept that goes along with awe is oxytocin. So you can have this overwhelm, which explains our tears. But then oxytocin is kind of this bonding chemical. We get it when we see our children, especially when they're first born. You get this mad rush, and it drives us to be attached to them, to bond with them. It's a survival thing, but it also, connects us to other people, to communities in general, and also to nature, positive feelings, emotions, all of those feelings that you might describe, as an awe experience or a spiritual experience. A lot of that biologically, it's literally oxytocin. So that made so much sense to me that when I went through that veil, I did see all these people who, bless them, had shown up for me. Mm-hmm. I do not have a large family. It's me and my brother, and he was not part of the church, but I had all these adults that had really been my community and my tribe. And in one specifically, he had a daughter who had died that was my same age. We were born a month apart, and she had lived 1 year, and then she passed away. And so my mom told me when I was little, he used to come over to my house and just ask if he could just hold me. And so he would hold me and rock me just to remind, him of his own daughter. And he came up to me right as I passed through that veil and like gave me a hug, kind of like it was his own daughter, And so I think that is what I was crying about. I wasn't crying because it was great going through this veil and having to repeat this weird thing with all these handshakes that I did not get and the weird clothes and the baker's hats. That was not why. It was because I did get this oxytocin thing, and I can now reconcile that memory, if that makes sense. I know where I was. I know what I was feeling was real, and I don't have to doubt that feeling, but I can also now know that it doesn't mean that what I was doing was like the real, true church, if that makes sense. So
no, it was the people. And I think that's what we all recognize finally looking back. Why did we feel good? Why did we have, it was the people. The people were wonderful. They were your community. And that's where you get those feelings about, for sure. But we were told it's the church. It's not. It's individual people and community that made a difference to you personally. So
and that is a void. Sorry, go ahead, Len.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say also, we know this because people from other faiths experience the same thing. So it's not a witness of truth like we've been told. It's a feel good, bonding, supportive feeling that you get when you experience, that mutual awe, I guess you could say. The positive emotions, the connection, that's what it is. And once you realize, we've just been told, we've just been lied to. We were told that it means something is true. No, because when on Lion King, when that monkey holds up baby Mufasa and all the animals bow, I would cry every time. I cry now. Every time I see it, I cry. Now, does that mean the Lion King is true? Does that mean, you know what I mean? No,
probably truer than the church. Yeah. No, I agree with you. I cry at movies. I cry at Wicked 1. I haven't seen Wicked 2 yet. I just went to see it. It was re-released in theaters, Wicked 1. I took my older son. He hasn't seen it yet. This is just like 3 days ago, and I'm sitting there, and the Glinda alphabet story is so much like me and my best friend in college, who ended up passing away later in her 30s, which, devastated me. But I was the weird bookie one. I wasn't green, but I was weird and bookie. She was the flamboyant, popular one. We did not like each other. We were thrown into an apartment at BYU, and then some events happened, and it's exactly like that scene, where the dance and everything. I'm like, oh, and my son's like, what's wrong with you? I go, it's exactly like, my best friend in college. So movies do it. And I think when you start realizing it, you're like, wow, I'm having the same feelings I had at church. Yeah, this is Disney. What does this mean? It helps kind of recover a little bit.
Definitely.
Yeah. And we're going to go through all the different types of awe so you can define them, but you just hit several of them, right? So
we're speeding through.
Media. Well, you're just on point. Like, just go with it. It's fine. It's a great thing. But yeah, I'm so excited to see Wicked 2, by the way. So this is all very timely. But yeah, I took my all of my kids, and my oldest, she was feeling this overwhelm, this oxytocin, and also like the vagus nerve. She was sobbing, and she told me later we had just left the church, and it was Nobody Mourns the Wicked, that song, and she just sobbed.
Yeah.
But it was so therapeutic for her, and so that movie, it does mean so much. And I probably feel as much.
Claim it as a post-Mormon anthem. I mean, the songs and the story, that you are seen as the wicked, but you're not. You're the one that knows the truth. So yeah, goosebumps.
Yeah. All good things, and concerts, all good things. Yay. Okay. So we do need more awe in our lives, I think, especially because when you leave the church, you have this void. You did kind of feel awe if you went to church and maybe you weren't full panic attack, but you were actually enjoying yourself, because that did happen sometimes. But you may have seen your friend and you were connected to them. And then when you don't go anymore, you lose that. You lose that community and that connection. And sometimes you're losing the connection to your family. That might have been the only way you connected. That might have been the only time you got this oxytocin feeling with your family. So, good luck at Thanksgiving this year if you don't have that. But you do need to have this in your life. I think they were saying that when you have just 5 minutes of awe a day in your life, it definitely brings up your, rating of your happiness. So if you've got to climb that corporate ladder and you've got to achieve, which is funny because that is also what you're doing in the church, right? You're doing task lists and callings and all of these things. And I do remember church leaders kind of cautioning people in trainings, saying, make sure you're really listening to the people that you're leading and trying to get people to actually connect and not do the task list. So, I mean, I got to give them, they had, some correct principles going on. But it's important that we still try to do that. You've got to let that other half go, that survival self, and really try to approach this sense of awe in your life just for your own good and to fill those voids that you may have. So there are different categories of awe. So we'll talk about each one of them. The first one is called moral beauty. So this is what I think of as like the Good Samaritan. When you've ever seen other people do amazing things or kind things or even athletic things or overcoming adversity. I talked about this before, but I lost my hearing or half my hearing anyway. I've got 50%, but I was in my late 20s and it just kind of happens. There's no real, they don't really know the cause of it. It just happens to some people. Um, and I do remember I kind of did a little bit of the speaking circuit. You know how sometimes that happens in Mormonism? Like you have something bad happen to you, and then if you're kind of, okay at public speaking and you got it together a little bit, you might get onto that train. And I rode that train and I talked about it. And in some ways, I do think it was therapeutic for me to be out there and to be talking about it. But I did love how, I mean, selfishly, I think I thought I was really cool, like being the center of attention. It felt good. But I was connecting with people. When you suffer something and then you're able to, view yourself as being resilient or view other people as being resilient, you do get that feeling of like we're all in this together. We're survivors. I don't know if you guys have anything that you think of. I love watching like the ESPN documentaries on athletes or the mountain climbing one, where the guy who climbed all the different peaks and all that. Do you guys have anything that you could in your life that you define as like moral beauty?
Now that I think about it, now that I see the definition, yeah, there are, like I said, I do like to watch climbing movies and things like that. And that's weird because that's probably the last thing in the world I would ever try. But you're right, accomplishing something. But I will tell you my secret vice, and I now realize it's kind of a Samaritan thing. I watched one and now I get all these on my feed, people that rescue like puppies or animals. You know what I mean? They always pop up and I
Yes.
always watch it and I'm like, oh, choose that puppy. It's terrible. I'm just getting so sentimental in my old age, but you just feel so, and maybe they're not real, maybe they are, but the people that are willing to do that to go rescue, an animal or anything like that. Yeah, I'm very susceptible to that. And I now realize by what you're saying, there's a chemical, a feeling that it gives me, that just makes me feel happy that somebody's doing some good in the world. I think is a very immediate kind of response to a little short reel about somebody that went and adopted a dog, an elder dog that nobody else wanted, something like that. You can really feel good about it. So what do you think, Lila?
Definitely the the
Yeah.
rescue videos. And also, I used to watch the Olympics, when it would come with my family and just bawl when you would see someone rise above, whatever their situation was and triumph. Or I remember one in particular that really stayed with me for a long time. And, these athletes train for 4 years and then they go and they compete. And this one woman was running, I think, and she tripped and fell. And one of her fellow athletes stopped and went and helped her instead of continuing as fast as they could, thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to win now because she fell. No, they went back and helped. And neither of them, scored or finished in the top four. I remember thinking that was beautiful, and just bawling. And, whenever anyone sacrifices their own safety to save or help someone else smaller or, less fortunate, those are beautiful moments that really, they're inspiring. They make you want to be better. They make me want to be a better person, and be more like that. And I think, yeah, what would I have done? I want to think that I would do that. I think those are the moments that are more, for me, more powerful than, some morality lesson or something like that at church. They really stick with you, they're meaningful.
And those were the lessons that really did touch me. If somebody was vulnerable and, did speak about their loss or, their triumph and were really truly vulnerable and honest, like that
Yeah.
was an experience for me. I did feel connected to them. It's the human experience. But again, Mormonism doesn't have a monopoly on that.
No.
And that's important to
No.
know.
They try to make it look like they somehow we're a little better. Somehow we're a little more special. And once you leave, you realize that just isn't true. And I think a lot of people in the church, if they travel, if they have any experience with, life outside of the Mormon corridor, they see that. They see, oh, there's really good people everywhere. We don't have a corner on it. Not at all.
Other people love their families. What?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Kids can grow up and be amazing without the young men program.
Yeah. No, you're not wrong about travel or anything like that. Just expanding your horizons and meeting other people and other cultures. You're like, okay, I see now. It's just a huge human tapestry. Nobody has the corner market on any of it. We're all human beings. We all do amazing things. Sometimes terrible things happen, but yeah, it's humanity. I think that's where everybody arrives at after they're, on the other side of Mormonism. It's being a human being. That's what it's all about.
And we're not immune to being bad, to being horrible.
I know.
Abusing children, look at our church is no shining example in those departments at all.
No, I definitely agree with you on that one. I was just watching Heather Gay's show that she just got out.
Surviving
so
Mormonism.
Good.
Yeah.
Yes. So good. Highly recommend. Between that and the Hulu Mormon Housewives, man, I'm like, I identify with all these people. Like,
yeah.
I mean, I'm no influencer, but other than that, I get it. All your issues, I get it. I get it.
Well, and then you have people on the faithful side going, these aren't real Mormons. This isn't what a Mormon's like. Yes, it is. They may not be practicing the way you practice now, but they were all raised and everything about them was informed by being raised in the Mormon church. So you cannot escape that as much as you want. They are you. And there's no way around that.
Well, and not to belabor the point, but, going back to this moral beauty thing, I literally was watching the reunion episode last night. I binge watched the whole thing.
Mormon Housewives.
Yeah. And I mean, I can't relate to, I was always wearing my garments and I did not drink and I didn't I'm not a partier and I don't, influencer life. They're younger than me. So they're a different generation. So I don't relate to that. But when they were vulnerable and talked about, the husband's issues and the wife's issues and all these different things, I really do think, I probably was having an awe moment there, because I'm like, oh, maybe not to that degree, but every single one of them that talked, I'm like, yep, been there, like every single one. And so you feel connected. And I think that's why in some weird way you want to, I think that might be why maybe active Mormons want to reject that so hard is because yes, it can give you a bad name, but also they may feel a little bit of connection there that they don't want to admit.
No, there was a really good article by Jana Reese in the Salt Lake Tribune about, are these real Mormons? And she said, of course, not everybody does what they do, what you just said, but there are issues with patriarchy and purity culture and sexuality, that underpins everything they do, like what you just described, they discussed. That is something all of us can relate to, post-Mormons and faithful Mormons, because that is a soup we were all raised in. And to someone looking from the outside in at that, someone who was not raised that way, that's why it's so popular. They can't believe it. They can't understand or comprehend. Rest of us understand it and we relate to these women. But yeah, it's very revealing, I think. And we all feel some kind of connection in some way, even though, like you said, much younger, but going through similar things because we were raised in that same system.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. Demi and Brett, Demi grew up in my home. She was my daughter's best friend all through. And Brett, who she's married to, he grew up in my home. So both of them, they're very, their ages are very, they're very far apart. Brett left on his mission when Demi was 3. So you can kind of see that. But anyway, I know their families, and Demi grew up in a very staunch LDS. Well, her mother was. Her dad was not a member. Her mother was extremely staunch, very narrow-minded, very, very strict. And then Brett grew up in a very Mormon family. They were the Saturday's Warriors first cast, his family was, and they go way back. So they're very staunch Mormons, and now they're a little bit of the black sheep in their respective families. But yeah, I can relate to everything that they're going through. Absolutely. I get it. I get why they've done what they've done and why they are where they are. Totally get it. If I was their age, I'd probably be doing some of the same stuff. So yeah.
I wish I'd given myself permission. I'm jealous. Like, to be honest, I'm like, why wasn't I that confident to do that?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
I just didn't.
Yeah.
I couldn't think for myself.
Yeah.
It is. It is. I'm not a young millennial. I'm a geriatric.
It's not too late.
I don't deserve that.
Girls trip to Chippendales. Isn't that where they went first season? We can do it.
Oh my gosh. I would be so awkward. I've never been on a girls trip. You need to take me. I've never had time. Too many kids.
We'll have to figure it out. Yeah. Among all the podcasts that we all do. Yeah. We'll have to find time for, a girls trip.
Yes. Add that to the list.
Beauty and awe.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So next up on our type of awe is collective effervescence.
Ooh, I love that phrase.
Yes. So this is groups. You're in a group setting, you're sharing a purpose, or this can also be rituals. So I would say you're in a group performing a religious ritual and you feel something, whatever that awe is for you. This also includes concerts, sporting events, holidays, family traditions. So if you love your holidays, you're probably getting high on oxytocin, and it's that feeling of awe, which I think is awesome. And you need to, keep that in your life, I think. And you can, like on the bottom here, I put that you can get swept away in these experiences and kind of time doesn't really matter. And I think sometimes you yearn for these experiences. I know I can tell now that I'm more self-aware when there's been a length of time where I haven't had one of these experiences, and I need to like see my family. I don't live by my family, so I want to be in a big group. I need to get together. I need to go to a concert. Like I need something. But I do think that this explains a lot of the feelings that we have when we're performing a lot of the religious rituals that we are. Baby blessings are amazing. And I probably, I don't think I got really emotional, but I definitely felt stuff, But I think it was more you had this group of people showing up for you and loving your child and supporting your spouse if he was, he happened to be the one blessing the babies. And I just loved seeing that. And I think I felt that connection to other people. And I think it is important to recognize that you can have social anxiety and still feel these feelings. It's not about being confident in a crowd. Like this is not the same thing as that. It's connection, that feeling that you have. So one of my first experiences that I was really confused by is I think I was a newlywed. So that means new to the temple, really confused, but not self-aware of what was really going on in my head. And I was nannying for a lady who was very, very Christian. She was from the South and had moved out to Salt Lake City, and I adored her. And she invited me to go to like my first ever like Christian rock concert, which I laugh because that's now what the church is doing.
Oh yeah, now it's fine. I've seen the leaders going like this and saying, do you feel the joy we're praising? I'm like, okay, I don't know what dimension I'm in right now, but you didn't do that. Even 10 years ago, you didn't do that. No way. And now they finally got it. Yeah, they finally get it. And they're trying to manipulate the kids with that emotion. They've got their phones out. They've got their cross jewelry. I could go on forever about this because you know how we were all raised. No, that does not happen. Nope.
Mm-hmm. Yep. We feel the spirit quietly. Right. Yep, like that's all just adrenaline. And that's what I did. I went to this concert and I'm not a touchy person, but we were all like, holding hands and like you said, like praising up high. Yep. And the music was really good. It was super fun. And I did really enjoy myself. And I was so confused. I was so confused by that. Like, how do I feel almost happier in this situation than I do at some of my own like church meetings? Like, is that God telling me that, oh, there's some truth in that, so that's okay? Or was it just adrenaline? And that was so hard to reconcile for me. But
Yeah.
now I'm like, no, it was
Yeah.
oxytocin. Like, it was great.
Yeah.
It was great.
Human experience. That's it exactly. And sometimes it happens really unexpectedly. You don't know that you're going to, I don't know, watch your fourth grader playing tackle football for the first time. And they say, you're the quarterback, and he runs the entire length of the field for a touchdown. And that happened to me. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to cry. I'm going to die, but it's just a little kid running down the field, but it just hit you like that, or you were one time I used to sing in the Black gospel choir, believe it or not. I was the token white person, and we were singing for a group of refugees who had just come over from Africa. And you're just up there and you're singing and you're looking at these kids, and you're just like, oh my, you just have it just hits you out of the blue, And when you have it independently of inside the church, you're like, oh, okay, this is a human experience. It's not crafted. It's not curated. It's what really happens in real life, where you're just touched, and overwhelmed by something that's happening that's beautiful and amazing.
Mm-hmm. How did you guys handle it? Oh, sorry, Lila, go ahead.
Oh, I always think of, the wave when you're at the sports arena and everyone stands up and does the wave. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I used to cry every time I saw the wave. I would cry. And I think it's just because it was this shared, group experience where we're all sort of coordinating with each other. And I don't know, it would make me cry. And my husband would look at me and go, what is wrong with you? But it was that, I don't know, it's that connection. And I think most sporting events are like that. I think that's the way the church allowed us to have a group experience that wasn't religious, was BYU sports. Then we could get rowdy and loud and have the music and the cheering, and all of that was fine in that arena, just not in the church building, right? Yeah, so that's the difference. But it's very real. It's very real. Mm-hmm. I experienced that.
And I think if you're deconstructing, again, you still need that connection. And now I did find it through, podcasts, through books, through these book clubs. I joined like 4 when I left, because I just needed to fill that void. And you do hear other people's experiences. And I think that's why podcasts like this are successful, because we all resonate with it. Like, we understand. I've been through that too. You're not alone. You're not crazy. You're not wrong. So it's just so nice to have all those shared experiences. So again, these feelings of awe, we need them in our life. So you can find them in big ways and small ways. And this is just yet another way. And I also, with the holidays coming up, I love going to different churches. I just think it's super fun.
Yep.
And I have gone to this little cowboy church a couple times. And I'm agnostic, so I don't believe like anything they're saying, but I was like loving it. And I was actually really embarrassed about loving it. And I didn't know how to explain that, because I thought my family that has left was going to be like, oh my gosh, you're getting brainwashed again. Like, you're just jumping right back into another thing. They didn't do that, but I was terrified of that. But I realized it was just because they all sing together. And you get to keep your cowboy hat on. And I like to dress up. Like, it was just fun. And the pastor is this little tiny cowboy. And he reminds me of my grandfather, who had like 250 head of cattle, So, and I'm like, oh, that's what it is. That's what it is. Okay, so this is okay. Like, I can love this. And when I need that little feeling, I can just go to cowboy church. It's super fun. So
you're not alone in that. I always try to go to some kind of Christmas Eve service, and I love it. And I have to say that some of my faithful relatives call me a hypocrite. I'm like, no, I'm not going because I believe in a deity or anything, but it's community. I mean, one of my favorite ones I went to was a little Presbyterian church, and it was just kind of very quaint and old fashioned. They had the hymnals. They had this amazing program. They passed out little candles that everybody held. And then there was a candle at the front, and they went through and lit everyone's candle, amazing. My hair actually almost caught on fire because somebody behind me leaned forward. I know someone had to go, ma'am, and push me away before I went up in a ball of flame. But, you're singing those songs. And I had the same question. Why do I feel so happy? Why am I just smiling and singing these Christmas songs? Because, I love Christmas. I love, people and community and whatever it's all about. So that's okay. You have to give yourself permission to feel what you feel and, why you feel it. It's okay.
Did you guys feel like you had a void when you left that you needed to fill in this, in like awe in any aspect? Did you feel like you lost that?
That's a really good question. I think you do feel like you miss that collectiveness, that community. You did go to a place and you were with people that were all working toward the same thing and understood each other completely. You physically went to a building where you sat together and felt that, you kind of felt surrounded. You could look to one side, oh, there's sister so-and-so, she's been here forever. Oh, there's the lady that I ministered. There's my, you just knew it was there. And then you're not in that anymore. And you're like, oh, okay. So it's just me. And sometimes it is just you, not even your family, right? Some people aren't lucky enough to have people go with them. And then you're like, what do I do? How do I replace that? How do I find people? How do I find that community? I think we're very lucky right now at this point in time. I think anybody that leaves or steps away right now could find a lot of resources and a lot of help right away. But even 5 or 6 years ago, you couldn't. You had to kind of fight for it and build it yourself, which maybe makes it more valuable or more important. But, just that familiarity of it's been my ward forever, it's my people. And then it's not, and they treat you different. So you have to find your own awe, your collective effervescence. I love that. It was like my new favorite phrase. You have to find that through other methods, and it's hard. It's hard, but I think it's worth fighting for.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Lila, did you have that experience at all? Like that you've lost anything or lost that feeling?
To be honest, I didn't. I I think I had separated myself from a lot of those feelings of community before I left, because I had gotten a divorce and then I was widowed. I mean, my divorced husband died, and there's just really no place in the church, or I felt very out of place. And I had moved, and so I wasn't in my community anymore. So I think I was ready to just be done with it. And I started listening to podcasts. Mormon Stories became a daily ritual. So maybe that's what I replaced it with, was other, community. Even if it was online, it was still that feeling of, okay, there's other people that are going through the same thing and they get me and we can be friends, even if it's distantly like that. So I think I might have had a different experience for some of those reasons. I also had friends that I could relate to, that we would meet every Wednesday night and talk about our situations post-Mormonly. That's weird. But I think that I replaced it with those things. It wasn't on the scale of church, but I think it worked for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I am so glad that you had that, but it does sound like life experience kind of forced you into finding that community, finding that support ahead of time. So yeah, I love that. I'm so glad.
Not in the way that church did it. I just think I'd had my fill of that. I realized I didn't fit the ideal anymore, and there was no reason for me to go. So I think that's kind of, I mean, I lost my testimony too, but that was one of the side, one of the things that happened as a result of losing my testimony was I just didn't fit the mold anymore. I wasn't married. I mean, let me tell you, being single in this church is a very lonely place to be. It's very lonely. And I feel bad for all the single women in this church. They're trying so hard to fit in, and it's just not even made for them.
And there are more single women than not single women in the church. That's what they don't really tell you.
Wow. That's big. That's huge.
Wow.
Doesn't work well.
It does make sense if single women find their community within the church, why it would be even harder for them to leave if they disagreed with the doctrine.
Yeah.
Which I think makes sense if, like if you're at a family gathering and you've got someone that knows about the history of the polygamy and the lying and the, all those things, they can still be connected to that church because that's where they get their not necessarily even social connection, but it really is this feeling of awe, like this greater purpose, this, you know what I mean? It's hard to describe.
Too.
Yeah. Yeah, it absolutely is. And I think I had a hard time giving people room, like space for that, because I was so frustrated at all the lies that I'd been told. And I couldn't understand how people who also knew those lies could stay.
Yeah.
And now I get it.
Yeah. Well, no,
Yeah.
your own brain does this to you as we're talking about your brain. Your brain wants to keep you very comfortable and happy. And so if you have some information that comes into your comfortable, happy paradigm, like, learning about polygamy, your brain will do all it can to spin it to you so that you can digest it and accept it and not worry about it. So you can maintain that equilibrium. And you can do that to yourself with every new piece of information that comes to you, even shocking information that you look at someone and go, how can you be okay with that? Well, your mind has made you okay with that until finally there's a point where something happens. You get some information that is just too much. Oftentimes it's something that happens to a child, right? Your kid is LGBTQ and the ward is horrible to them. Your brain eventually goes, okay, I cannot make this fit. I cannot make this okay. And then you kind of break open. And that's when you see it. That's when you leave. It has to be so uncomfortable that you go. And everybody has a different threshold. And once I understood that, I read a couple books about that. I'm like, I get it. I can now look at my parents who accepted things that I was like, how in the world? I never asked them, of course, but how can you be okay with this? You just make it fit. Your brain does it to you until finally something. And some people that never happens. They can make everything fit, but other people, and it's usually treatment of people where they just can't stand by, I will not let my child be treated like this. And then you start seeing everything. But it's really interesting what your brain does to you. It really runs the show, despite what what you think. It really runs the show.
Yep. Fabulous, ladies. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next type of awe, which is wild awe. This is your nature. Yeah, so I think nature, science. I love chemistry. Those were like some of my favorite classes in college. So I just love the way things fit together. And it is kind of hard to describe how I may not have always had the best grades, but I like have this super love for it. And I'm like, oh, it's because I felt awe about it. I just felt really cool. And I know isn't Landon, he's very into like astronomy and all that stuff. That's actually a little intimidating to me. Like it's a little bit overwhelming. I'm like, I don't want to know how insignificant I am. Like let's keep me a little significant for the moment. But all of these things are this wild awe. And this, like you said, I think is a simple way that people can kind of start to fill that void. It can help you cope, when you're leaving the church or just in life in general. I mean, I know I've been told that, just to get outside every day is something that's really important to do. So do either of you have any mystical experiences with wild awe? Super fun.
I love that wild awe. I know I would always tell my kids, just go outside and touch grass, right? Go run through, just kind of ground yourself, go to a park, lay on a blanket. There are just things that you kind of instinctively know, I want to do it. I became actually wild awe is why I finally left the church, having never believed my entire life, but being in till I was 56. So when I was a primary pianist, I had a partner. I've told this story before. So I only had to go every other Sunday, which was amazing because I was always looking for ways to get out of the system. On the Sundays that I stayed home, I discovered sitting in my backyard in the sun, drinking tea in a bikini. I'd never done that before. And I'm like, I just felt something I had never felt anywhere else. And it was my sacred time. The rest of the family would go off to church and I would sit there in the backyard and I would do this. And it was so therapeutic and incredible. I got to do it every other Sunday. I didn't realize how much it meant to me, but I left the church over it because eventually my partner playing the piano, they fired him and they said, okay, you have to do it every Sunday. We'll find you somebody. And I was like, I have to what? And I did it for like 3 weeks. And I'm like, but wait, where's my wild awe? I physically and mentally and emotionally missed. It wasn't the same to come home from church and do it. You had to wake up and you had to go out in that morning sun and do it. And that gave me the courage, literally one Sunday after doing this for like 4 Sundays in a row, not being able to do I actually call it my new religion, Takini. You wear a bikini and you do tea. I'm not kidding. I started my own religion. And I said to them over text, I'm sorry, I can't come back. And I did it because I realized that I valued my wild awe over whatever was happening there. And I was not going to let that go. And they texted me back a few minutes later. Oh, we found a partner for you. You only, I'm like, nope, I did it. I ripped it, and that was it. So I understand this concept, and people may laugh and make fun of me for that, but it was a big deal for me to just take those moments for myself in the sun with my favorite tea, reading a book. I left the church because I wanted to
I love that.
not
I
be.
love that.
So,
You dipped your toe
yeah,
into freedom.
little bit. Yeah.
Just a tiny bit, and you
Yep.
tasted it. And it
Yep.
was so good. It was so much better than whatever you had at church.
Yeah.
You
And then when they tried to
refused.
take it away, I
Yeah,
fought
you're
for it,
like,
which I normally would
oh,
never do. I don't rock the boat. I don't quit. I don't say no. But it finally got to the point where they were going to take it away from me. And I had to say no. I had to push back. So I
yeah,
know it seems really
hell
small,
no.
but it was a big deal to me. So
Yeah, I love that.
No, I don't think that's small at all. And I think you were given a choice kind of freedom. Like
mhm.
Lila said, you kind of dipped your toe in it. And Lila, it sounds like you kind of were forced to face that freedom, like with being divorced and kind of, I don't want to say being rejected by the community, but you no longer had a spot. So
That's
you
true.
that kind of stuck your foot in the freedom fountain, kind of going,
Yeah,
wait a minute, maybe this isn't the
in
same
that
thing.
way. Yeah. Yeah, and you know what? As soon as I think what happened was the awe lost its awesomeness. It went away. And when I had a little while to not be there, to not experience the fake awe, I don't know. I realized I didn't need it and I didn't want it and it wasn't real, and like Rebecca, it was like, oh, no, 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 you're not going to take away my moment in the sun in my bikini with tea. Those are
Tahini.
non-negotiable
I'm
now.
signing up people for
Bikini.
my religion right now. Even men, tahini, do it. So
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's just when you realize that what you have found is so much better for you. And I tell people, that are still in, my kids, I have most of my kids are still in. And I just say, it just didn't work for me. And I know you think, no, it's for everyone, mom. This is for everyone. No, it really isn't. It's great if you're white, straight, male. Those three things are perfect fit. But if you're not any of those three things, or even one of them is missing, like it's going to be more difficult. So it doesn't work for a person who, like Rebecca, never believed it. I saw too many problems. Like you said, the sausage, I saw how it was made from the time I was little. And I was like, this is not anything special like they're pretending it to be. It's not what they're saying. I know too much. I know they're not what they say they are. And all it took was an opportunity for me to bail. And I took it, man. It was like, I'm out of here. I'm never looking back.
Mm-hmm.
No way.
Mm-hmm.
It's too good outside of it. And
I
people
think
don't know that. They
I
don't know
think
it.
COVID did that to a lot of people,
COVID.
gave them the chance
Mm-hmm.
to step away from the fake awe. And think about it, a lot of families, they did go out in nature. What else was there to do?
Yes.
They would, instead of being in a church building, they would take their families out. And we don't know exactly how many families stepped away during COVID, but anecdotally, we have so many stories from people that said, I got off the hamster wheel. I had a chance to find some other things and I could not go back. So I think that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Wild awe.
That
True.
was kind of our opportunity to dip our toe outside. My husband had mentally been out for several years. He'd had a suicide attempt in 2017, which we thought was more from any like trauma, like law enforcement, military kind of stuff. But really now he's opened up that it really was the religion that kind of led to his suicide attempt. So he mentally was out after that, but he didn't dare say anything to me, right? Because he thought his wife and kids were going to leave him. So then during COVID, and I always had social problems, like just the inequality. And like when the Boy Scout scandal came out, I was like, okay, like children's rights come first, like always. And I was just really furious about that. So we had those things we talked about, but then it was COVID Sundays, and I remember we went outside and we put up our little pop-up tent and we just sat there and we did nothing but just be with each other. And at the end of the day, it opened up our first conversation where we were like, this is the best Sunday I've had in a long time. The most peaceful, calm, loving. I'm happy. And I thought I was supposed to be miserable in the middle of this pandemic, but I'm happier on this Sunday than I've been in a long time. And, it wasn't immediate, but you have to open up that conversation and then the floodgates open. And I appreciate anyone who has the courage, Lila, like you seem to have the confidence to openly just voice that or question it within yourself. And I didn't even have the confidence to allow myself to think or address my own thoughts. I gave all of that to the church and the gospel, like, and the scriptures and my leaders. I did not dare even think for myself at all. So I
No,
really
well,
admire that in you.
you're not taught to do that, really. Like, we're supposed to always defer to a higher authority, a male. That's just what we're taught from the time we're little. So it doesn't surprise me, I was talking just this morning to my boyfriend who's never been Mormon, but was raised in Utah, and he couldn't believe it when I said we were never taught boundaries. We were never taught to, you know what I mean? We weren't. Boundaries is a big word right now. It's very, it's one of those hot topics, but we were not taught to do that. In fact, it was the opposite. We were to not have boundaries because we had to always defer to someone else. And I think when you have a minute, just like COVID did, you have a minute to exercise your freedom to think for yourself. That is so, talk about the fruit of, the delicious fruit. That's what that is the freedom. That tastes so good that you just don't want to go back to handing that over to someone else who doesn't care about you. Like, all you have to do is see how they treat children that have been abused. They don't care about those kids. They care about the perpetrator and making sure they get on the path to repentance and put them back in a calling. Instead of saying, no, there's no forgiveness for a pedophile. You're out. Goodbye. Excommunicate. Done. Never give them another calling again. There should be no forgiveness, but instead the kids have to go. They have to forgive their perpetrator and probably get abused again. I'm sorry, this could go down another rabbit hole, which I won't do, but yeah.
It's on everybody's mind today for sure. So
yeah. And with the Epstein files and everything.
Yeah.
We just were not taught that we have the power to determine our own lives and our own choices, especially as women. We do not have to do what they tell us. We don't. And that's mind-blowing for a girl in the church. We just weren't taught that.
And I think we can bring it full circle that is why these awe experiences are so important, because it did take a moment of quiet and connectedness out in nature. And it did happen to be with my family, but it doesn't have to be, where I was able to kind of go, my thoughts are valid. Like, my feelings are valid. And maybe I should not second guess every single thought that I have and just kind of go with it for a second. Yeah. The last thing I'll say on this one is it's a different story, but I had quite a journey this summer. I found myself a Mormon informed counselor, which I highly recommend. That was super, super helpful. And I don't know the name of the study. I'll have to find it, but she was saying that they're finding that, brain scans of people leaving these high demand religions are showing up similar to people who are in like combat trauma, which I will just say is why, my family's like super like effed up is because we've got like both of those. And I'm like, no wonder we're crazy and confused and trying to figure this out. But I feel such a feeling of awe of the resilience and the survival. Like, I don't know if you ever feel like you survived something and we're connected now. And that's also awe. That's also your community. And you can be proud of that. That doesn't make you a bad person.
Yeah. And it's almost an instant community. That's what I found on the other side. It is like veterans running into each other. It's just unspoken, not every detail, but in general, what you've gone through. And I think about when we started the Good Book Club, which is why we're having this presentation today, 5 years ago, and just kind of connected on Reddit. That's how I met my co-host Landon, right? Is just a random stranger. Hey, yeah, I'll help you start a book club. I had been a librarian, and we had our first meeting. We just put a little notice out. Does anyone want to read? Here's a Zoom link. Let's get together, and we didn't know who would show up. And I've told this story before, but it was so powerful. We didn't know what it would be or what would happen. And so about 15 of us show up and we're all like, hi, I'm this and I live here. Then there's one woman and it's a very dark space. And we're like, hi, we can see your name on the thing. We're like, hello, so-and-so. And she's like, I'm in my closet. The rest of my family is going to church. I'm a mom. I need, she couldn't even say what she needed. She needed something or someone or just anybody that would understand, what she was feeling or where she was. She didn't want to be a part of the church anymore. She was literally in her closet, and at that moment we're like, okay, this is really important, to try to form a community, to try to have a group, to try to help, and the Good Book Club actually morphed into then Mormonish podcast, more talking, more people, more trying to reach, and just be there for people and also learn from people and their experiences. So the community part, it's super important, but I find that post-Mormons, they can really just start talking to each other, because they have this common experience. Have you guys found that? I just think it's amazing. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I've definitely found that. And I'll give you an extra plug for the work that you do, Rebecca, because when I first joined, like obviously you guys were so welcoming and just the most non-judgmental people and there's a great diversity, I think.
Huge age, everything. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I love that. But also, I was older when I went back to nursing school, and it was kind of awkward because I was so in that mindset. I was kind of questioning things, but I was still fully in, wearing my G's and all that. And when I would talk to my fellow students, mostly female, I would talk about my husband and my children. And they finally stopped me and were like, well, we didn't ask about them. We were asking about you. And I was like, holy crap. Like I've disappeared completely.
Yeah.
Like I can't even talk about myself. So when I joined the book club, I was shaking like a leaf to present, but I made myself do it because I went back to, I used to be a bookworm. Like that's who I was. That was just part of me. And I lost that. I lost my entire identity. And so I forced myself to sign up on your very friendly, but we need presenters list.
Self-induced. You totally did it.
Yeah,
You didn't have to.
I
That's right. It's all
did.
volunteers. So
I did. And I needed that awe experience and that connectedness. And I needed to find myself. And so you do have to put yourself out there, but I think it's worth it. So anyway, keep doing your good work. Good job.
Oh, everybody's awesome. That's for sure. It's great.
It's fine. We love it. We love it. All the things. Okay, so after you're done hanging out in the wilderness, let's see what else you can do to bring some oxytocin. Oh, music.
Ooh, yeah.
We love music. Musicals. I know we have some experience in that. I don't know if you guys have any favorite music experiences. I also know they're doing studies now about, again, trauma survivors. And they're saying, and I totally resonate with this, but people who have trauma and then they put their headphones on and it's kind of like super loud and a certain like rhythm. But I think of it as kind of more angry music, I feel like, but it's very intense. And I know that calms me down. Totally calms me down, where I think it would amp a lot of other people up maybe. And so there is such a biological response to music. And even though I have hearing loss, I still have one good ear, so I do still hear things fairly normally. But it is interesting that I thought I would lose that, and you don't. I don't hear things exactly the same, and I miss a lot, details in the music sometimes. But no, you still feel that. You still have that connectedness. And I remember, was it Beethoven that used to like lay on the ground? I think he was deaf, and he would like feel the vibrations.
Yeah, the vibrations.
Yes. And so I'm like, it's universal, So I think this is great. I don't know how you guys feel about music, but I know, Rebecca, with your musical background, it's probably really important to you, I would imagine.
I think it's interesting that a lot of people, when they step away from Mormonism, they do create playlists, my Exmo playlist, things like that. They find music that tells their story. Like I talk about Wicked. I'm all about Wicked now, but even before the movies, the play, the book, I read the book, but the play, so many people stepping away from Mormonism, said, this is my story. This is my music. These songs are speaking for me. And so many people create these playlists, for different reasons. The angry playlist, like you said, to kind of work it out. And then the I'm going to be okay, it's going to be good playlist. But yeah, it's a way to transcend. Just you put your earphones on and you transcend wherever you are, sitting on a train, riding to work, put your earphones on and you're going to hear it. So, and I think about how much control there was over the music in the church. It's not so much that way anymore because now they've allowed Christian music. But when I was growing up, it was the era where you brought your evil rock music to the young women's, young men activities, and they would burn it, right? And there were firesides on, satanic backmasking and the heavy bass beat. They were always telling you to stay away from that because that was going to make you do something. It's got a tribal sound. I mean, oh my, you can't even imagine how
you're going to have sex.
You're going to have sex.
Yeah. Listen to the drum.
Yeah, your music, you fought with your parents over your music all the time. Luckily, I liked mostly show tunes, but even that I would fight over. There were certain words in show tunes, like South Pacific. There's a song called Bloody Mary, and I'd sing at the top of my lungs, ain't that too damn bad? Dang bad, right? The song West Side Story, where the Jets and Jet from my first cigarette to my left. No, my parents made me sing the word vinaigrette, right? I was afraid of salad dressing for years. And I mean, things like that, they just control you through the music. And on the other side of it, you can listen to whatever you want for whatever reason that you want, anything. And you can find yourself and find your personality and find what works for you. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of musical therapy, whatever that means to you, right? And have you guys ever had a sound bath? That is amazing. I tried that for the first time at Sunstone last year. I was like, I'm not into this kind of stuff. We're all sitting in a room and the sound witch came in, and I'm like, oh, this is cool. But oh my God, I'm so not into this. I was, I fell asleep. I did all the stuff. I came out of it going, I feel amazing.
What was that?
I was very skeptical and just going along with it. But yeah, the human body responds to those rhythms and that music. And it's a way to experience awe, just sitting on your couch, put your headphones on, go to a different realm, right?
Totally. 100%. Do you remember when the church wouldn't allow guitars to be used in that musical?
Up until like a couple years ago, nothing. I remember there was a guy in my ward, he played the French horn just beautifully. And he wanted to play a Christmas solo. And they said, no horns, nothing. I mean, they were obsessed over it. The number of firesides and evil Christian music. I'm telling you, nobody believes me. I get pushback all the time when I talk about it, but you are not allowed to go to Christian concerts with friends. As a mom, I discovered a channel, K-Love, with Christian music. I liked it. It was kind of upbeat. It was kind of fun. My kids liked it. I told other women, they're like, oh, I don't think we're supposed to.
It's not church approved.
Guilty. Yeah. And now to see those young men and young women, general leaders at those concerts that they have, and they're out there going, do you feel the joy? And they're raising it just bugs the crap out of me.
I know.
Like, really? Did you forget everything?
It just shows that it was all random to begin with.
It was all random.
All the rules were random.
What was it all for? That's my new phrase. Everything they changed. They take away the evening session of conference. Well, what was it all for? What was all that for? Right? They changed the age of missionary age for girls just happened a few hours ago. What was it all for? Garments are now a strap. What was it all for? And then you realize it was for nothing.
Wasn't. Yeah. Nothing. That's
nothing.
Right.
There's no awe in nothing. Let's just say that.
But if you need to get over your angry feelings, you can get some good music.
Yes.
Get back to your feelings of oxytocin.
That's right.
And calm down.
That's it. Let's all put our headphones on now.
I listened to a reel, I guess, this morning, probably 15 times, over and over and over. And it was this guy with some girls, and they were dancing to the old Nitty Gritty song from like the 60s.
Yeah.
And it was so good. I kept watching it and watching it and watching it. And I wanted to just be there. And it has nothing to do with anything. There's no like intrinsic value to this song, but it's something my mother would not have allowed us to listen to because it's talking about, nitty gritty, which was kind of grindy and kind of sexual. And but I love it so much. And it's from the 60s. I mean, it's not like evil rock music, but the church just they had us all wrapped up in all kinds of anxiety about nothing.
Well, and the music is still a huge part of this. Like I've heard a lot of post-Mormons say that is the last thing to go. I don't think about anything. I don't know who the prophet is now. I'm so removed, but I still have that primary song going through my head. I can still find myself accidentally humming that. So I think they know the value of music and they do use it to manipulate. And when I
Yep.
see the new hymns come out, I pay attention, especially to the new children's hymns or the primary songs that they've written.
Yes.
And even more so. I mean, we used to have Once There Was a Snowman. Now we have I Can Have My Own Sacred Grove. I Better Believe in the Vision. I mean, it's indoctrination.
Ew.
It's absolute indoctrination. And I realized that in primary. Like I said, I put myself in primary for decades because I thought I'm safe here. It's okay. I like the kids. It's fun. We do fun stuff and I'll play the piano or teach. But the more I was in there, I realized, there's a lot
It's
of
a
not great
tool.
things going on there. Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, those songs, they're still in all of our heads. I think that's why people write parody songs to the primary songs to try to like exercise them from their brains. So I don't know. Music is powerful, a powerful source of awe. Let's say that.
So I am curious though, along the same line, like if that church music was so influential, then there is the whole kind of church theory of like if you listen to the wrong kind of music, you will be influenced by it.
Yeah.
So like, is there some truth to that?
It can be
Is there some truth?
empowering, I think. I think it can be
Okay.
empowering and make you think in a different way or feel a different way. Yeah. And maybe just kind of gain some autonomy is what it does.
Okay.
I think that can be true. Like when I was growing up, it was the heavy bass beat. They would warn you against that all the time. They say, don't, if you're in a car with a boy on a date and he turns the radio on and it's a song and he turns up the bass, you turn that bass down because you're going to have sex.
Get out of the car.
Get out of the car.
Get out of the car.
It's a boy with a heavy bass beat. You're not going to go there. It's not about the bass, baby.
I did not know that was something.
Yeah, no, it was a thing.
Boys to stand tall. Like I didn't know that a bass. I'm never gonna look at a bass speaker the same ever again.
Nope, it was that. And they described it as like a primal. I think they even actually said jungle beat. Some of the, terrible, right? In the firesides like that. So,
that
but yeah, everybody was really aware of music. I remember going on a date with a guy and the song, this is early 80s, feel like making love, right? And they say it over and over. He would literally turn the radio, feel like,
the time.
Feel like, yeah.
Turn it down.
Yeah, you would turn down the words "making love." I'm like, okay,
well, then you just
I
think
really
it
don't
in
want
your
to make
head,
love to you anyway. So,
that's
music
funny.
was a huge thing when we were all growing up. But it's a way
Remember,
to
it was
change your
Boyd
mood.
K. Packer. Boyd K. Packer, your mind is a stage.
Yes.
So if you start having evil thoughts, you have to think of a hymn that
that'll work.
Push the evil off of your stage.
That'll work.
And then if you play bad music, you're inviting that evil into your brain. Yeah. And you're going to do naughty things, but it'll be your fault.
Well, it's because music can be empowering. It's not that you're doing naughty things. You just feel empowered and maybe you have some agency returned to you and you can be more yourself, so
can't have that.
Yeah.
No, I do think that these experiences though can be so individualized, like going forward. So, I probably do in times of panic or something. There is probably a primary song just out of habit that would pop into my head.
Soothing, yeah.
And I'm not angry about it. Like if that's what's comforting to me, it reminds me maybe of a happy time in my childhood or like something. If it brings a positive feeling, I'm okay with that. It's kind of funny, like when I coach, people are very particular about the music they work out to, and you will get complaints. And it is just funny when it is like the prissiest, like sweetest little ladies that they want the most vulgar, like hip hop, like just loud. And I'm like, okay, like you do you, boo. Like if that's what works for you, like I will put that on as loud as you want, So just maybe let's not make sure we're not self-limiting in our pursuit of awe, right? As we're filling these voids maybe in our lives. So whatever works for you, just find your music, enjoy it. All right. Yep, so another kind of awe is really interesting. It was sacred geometries. So I have always loved like architecture and art history and, took the one art history class and thought, oh, I should be an art major, but really I was terrible at it. But I think it's because you have this natural inclination of seeing beauty and you do kind of feel this connection. And I also feel a connection when thinking about like how people anciently survived and how long ago these things were and how they've lasted and they were beautiful then and they're beautiful now. Like it's just this beautiful, cool feeling. And that is a type of awe. And it's in religions. And that never occurred to me. But when you think about it, I don't know if you ladies do, but you do have that feeling of connectedness. I think it's universal.
Yeah,
for
no, you
everybody.
can walk into a place and say, this is my church, even if it isn't a church, a building. I mean, I just got back from Naples, right? So I went to Herculaneum, I went to Pompeii, I went to all kinds of cathedrals on the Amalfi Coast. And every time you walk into these, you're just like, and I was there with Landon and we were both like, when you walk into the temple, this is not what you feel. When you walk into a stake center, it's not what you feel. This is a feeling, right? They got to bottle this and take it back to Utah, because I don't know if they know what they're missing. I think maybe they were trying to do this kind of. We saw a lot of chandeliers, especially in Italy, in the palaces and things. I'm like, maybe that's what they were trying to do. But yeah, we went to one palace. Oh, I can't remember, the Caserta, and every room we walked in, we both just went, oh my God. I mean, it was just like overwhelming and stunning and awe. That was exactly it. So it doesn't have to be outside. I think that's the point. Awe is whatever makes you feel awe, right?
That's right.
I think there was one member of our book club when we did this presentation earlier, and he mentioned the show Bluey that his children watch, which we love Bluey. And he said there was an episode where the dad and the kid were playing outside, and then the kid goes inside and the dad is still outside. Like, what's he doing? And he was just staring at a leaf, like just, and I think we've all done that. Like, just picked up a piece of grass and been like, huh, like, and I think, like you were talking about dipping your toe in freedom, you have to give yourself freedom to pause in a day to appreciate those things and to find those things. And again, if you do that, you're likely to be able to deal with all of those other parts of yourself that you've got to deal with out in the world. So it's worth taking just a moment to really kind of find that.
Yeah. I'll tell you a funny story about RFM, and I'm sure he does this to you too, Lila. He'll often at the end of the day, taking a walk, headed to a studio or back or wherever, he will snap a picture of a sunset, some geese, a mountain, and
pretty much every day.
He'll send it to all of his friends. They're gorgeous pictures. Or I'll call, he'll go, I can't talk to you now, I'm trying to get these ducks. They're this perfect, people don't know that about him. We're revealing it now, but he has this incredible eye for beauty, and he is taking a moment of awe and taking a walk. And then not only does he feel his own awe with his own experience, he shares it, with different people. He'll text us pictures. So, I'm having whatever, I'm riding the train back from work, and then I get, ding, and I look down, look at that sunset. It really is very kind of him to share that. And it's really cool to think that, here's a person who appreciates that. You might not think that about him, but he does, and he has that moment where he has a little second of awe and he shares it. So I think it's a great thing.
I love that he naturally does that.
Yeah.
I think we were taught in the church, like, I think I was taught to kind of try and have the pause, right? Like, slow down, enjoy things. But I was not given permission to even pursue care of myself at all, I don't feel like. And so for me, it's now a struggle to reconstruct and to give myself permission to, like, I love sunsets as well. Like, that's a huge thing that I've loved my whole life, but to give myself permission to just hold still long enough to do that. I think it's way more in general, but
that is really hard.
Yeah.
There's too many things that you're supposed to be doing. Like, if you slow down and enjoy nature, you're not doing your genealogy stuff, and you're not preparing your next lesson, and you're wasting precious time. Yeah, I love that about RFM. I also find that my youngest son, almost every evening, because we have beautiful sunsets in Utah, I would hear him on the roof. You could hear him on the roof of my house, and he's up there videoing the sunset and what it looks like on the mountains over here, and just loves anything beautiful, any little special thing. He's got to capture it. And I do think there's something to that connects us to something bigger. I'm not saying God, I'm saying something bigger than ourselves, because the universe alone is so awe-inspiring, don't you think? Just the stars and the moon, all of those things, mountains. It's just so majestic, the world that we live in. And I love art. Just looking at this right here, it does something to me. I'm a designer. I design fabric for a living, and being artistic and taking time to create, I think, is something well, for me, I can't live without that. I need
Mhm.
that to be
Mhm.
happy. So
I,
I 100%
I,
get it.
I think it's great. And it took a counselor like telling me to my face, you need to like let yourself create every day. It doesn't mean you're an
Mhm.
artist,
Yeah.
because I always thought, oh, I'm not the artsy one in the church. Like that's not my skill set.
Right.
I'm not that one. So yeah, give yourself permission to look at a sunset, look at a leaf. I mean, I color on
Yeah.
my overalls. That's how I do art. That's what I do. It's fun and I like it
Oh,
and I'm not ashamed, but I kind of hate that the church kind of robbed me of stupid things like that.
that's it. Yeah.
So that's where my rage music comes in, is that kind of
Uh-oh.
irritates me.
Put
Yeah.
that on. Yeah,
I'm,
it was the hamster
I'm pretty,
wheel. There is
yeah.
not a
Yep.
lot of time for awe or for projects or to explore frivolous things when you're on that hamster wheel. I mean, you said it, Lila, the genealogy. Have you done your indexing? Have you done your ministry? There's just every day, just
Mhm.
jam packed. And it almost feels, I mean, they don't say it's selfish, but you almost feel selfish if you were to take a moment to color on your overalls, right? But on the other side
Mhm.
of it, you understand that that's like the most important thing, right? That helps you be you and then be your best person for everybody else. But I don't know that that existed for everybody on the other side when you were in the church on the hamster wheel.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's
And
right.
depending on your skill set and your identity,
Yeah.
I mean, you were one of the ones that was musical, right? Like you played the piano. That was you. That was your task. That was your identity. And so it's hard for us to stray from that. So I think again, have an open mind about how you pursue awe in your life and don't limit yourself. It doesn't have to be like we were taught that you're given these talents and you've got to develop them. Well, maybe there's just stuff you enjoy. And as a human, everyone should create. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't mean you're an artist. Just, I don't know, like do something, water a plant. Like that's something. Like,
And do
you
something
know
out
what
of
I
the
mean?
box, right? I mean,
Yes.
it's funny when you say,
Hmm.
it's true. I played the flute, I played the piano, I did all the music stuff. But then as I moved farther outside of Mormonism, I took up the drums. I started a band, I did, the devil rock and roll. You just kind of morph into what you love. You take that and you just take it another direction. Maybe I was
Hmm.
meant to be a drummer all along, but instead I was a primary pianist from age, 11 on, right? No drums for a girl in the 70s. But when I was in my 30s, I'm like, I've always wanted to do this. So, I started playing and it kind of got people around and we had a band. So yeah, it's never too
Hmm.
late to do anything, I think is the bottom line. Find your eye, however
Hmm.
you find it. There's no
Yeah.
wrong that you can do.
Yep.
I
Give
love it.
yourself permission.
Give yourself permission. There you go.
Yeah. So I think this might be the last kind of awe. I think there's 8 total.
Okay.
So you can flip through the slides. I'm sure you can probably see them if you want to know more about them. But the last one is death and awe. So meeting our ends. And I feel like trying to explain death has been something that religions have been trying to do forever. To me, that's like a core reason for religions, is explaining things we didn't necessarily understand, and like now we do for science. um but it's still kind of hard, like, right, especially tragic death. I think it's just super hard to reconcile. And I know for me, I've been through tragic deaths, both like inside and outside of Mormonism. And the ones that were outside of Mormonism were, is it bad to say they were so much better? They were dealt with so much better. It's a better funeral. They put the fun in funeral. No, it wasn't fun, but it was so much healthier, is what I feel like, with the way the funerals went, the way the family coped and everything. And a lot of that has to do like with this research where they said that what you need to do when faced with kind of death, and to kind of, you can still kind of have this connection to awe, to something beyond yourself, but be open, observe, and then just wonder. But what it cautions you is do not, and I think this is the Mormon way with death, is do not take action, provide interpretation, reframe, or turn away. And I know we all probably have experiences of everybody rationalizing the death, telling us why it was God's plan. It was, blah, blah, blah. And like, that hit me at a very young age. I think I was in my 20s, yeah, very early 20s, when my husband was in his first like traumatic shooting violent event. And there were several people that died in that. And the way people tried to rationalize it was just so deeply hurtful. I can't even explain it. Like and then it happened later in life in a different situation, and it was out of the church, and people just accepted it as a tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to love each other now, and we need to love this little family that has been abandoned in this tragic death. And you can't make sense of everything in the world. And it was just so much healthier. But this whole like, it was God's plan and they were meant to go and it was their time. Like that, I don't know. I don't know if you guys have opinions on that, but
No,
it
you're
was
not wrong.
just so messed up.
The reframing is the most dangerous and harmful thing. And you do it every time. Oh, well, he's dead because he was needed as a missionary. Oh, he's dead. No, randomness is so much more comforting where you can say to yourself, oh, it was random. It's horrible that it happened. And I'm devastated, but it was random. There's no reason. There's nothing I did. There's nothing they did. There's no meaning. I mean, I've told it before, the story of my best friend who I described before, my Glinda, right, who died having her fifth baby when we were in our mid-30s together. And at her funeral, which was, horrific because our little kids, they were screaming for it. It was terrible. The bishop said, it's possible that she died so that, some inactive or non-member neighbors could come to the funeral and learn the gospel plan, because that's how God works, right? He's going to take the life of a young mother with 5 little kids under 9 so that but again, it's that reframing. That is how they make sense of it. And I don't even blame them, because that's what you have to do when you have, this whole story and narrative and mythology around you about the next life and this and that. And you're not even really allowed to mourn because someone who's dead is now doing missionary work. How do you say to a child, your mother was she was needed somewhere else more? That's a horrible reframe, right? On the other side of it, when somebody passes away, you know what? That was random. And I'm sorry, but now we're going to move forward with the living and we're going to take care of them. At least, oh my God, my whole set is falling apart. I feel awe. Anyway, sorry, I get passionate about the topic of death because it really matters. And it is the reason religion exists. And it's the reason a lot of harm is done. And there can be I've been to some pretty horrific funerals, framed in the Mormon way. I'm sure you guys have too. So, and you can really speak to that, Lila. I mean, you've had that experience more than most people. So. Yeah.
Yeah, I had 3 family members die this year too.
Yeah, that's what
on top of it.
I know.
And my husband and my parents,
Yeah.
So I agree with you. People trying to say, well, that God needed them more on the other side. They must be doing, some amazing missionary work, or there's always those people that say things like that. And I think it comes from a need that they have to make everything make sense and have reason for why it happens. When you realize that things don't happen for a reason, shit happens and there is no reason, stop trying to make this make sense, because it's not going to make sense. We live on a planet that has, in my opinion, this is my belief, no one's in charge. This is just life coming, going, people interacting, things happening. It's just it's a shit show. I'm sorry, but that's the way I see it. And that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And then when you stop having to make everything have a reason, then you realize it takes away all that need, that frantic anxiety to make death have meaning. Instead, it's just what happens on this planet to living things. They die, and they die tragically. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they get to be old. Sometimes they're babies. Sometimes they get sick and get better. Sometimes they get sick and die. This is just the way it is. And yes, it's sad. And that's why we rally around and help whoever is going through the terrible thing. But what we don't need to do is explain it, because there is no explanation for it that's going to make them feel any better. It's not. It's just is what it is. That's just the way I see it now. I know that there's probably people that hear what I'm saying will disagree, because they have another way of looking at it that works for them. And you know what? I validate that too. Everyone has their way. And I'm not trying to say mine is the only way. That would make me like what we left, right? So I'm not going to try to impose my beliefs on others. I am just saying that for me, the way that it makes sense is to not try to make sense out of it.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly said. And it's funny because I think we're all characterized on the other side of Mormonism. Oh, you frightened atheist, right? Or agnostic. You hear those stories. Remember Brad Wilcox, the bus is going over the cliff. It's the atheist who's stomping on everybody, or the plane's going down, President Nelson, not really. And it's, those that don't have their faith in order, that are terrified. I found it exactly the opposite. I was terrified of Mormon death and everything you described, Lila, how they, everything. Now it's just random. And it's funny because, like I said, I just got back from Italy, went to a whole bunch of catacombs, Pompeii, Herculaneum, a lot of death, right? Ancient death, like you just described. But to me, it was kind of peaceful. I'm like, death happens. I'm going to die. Yeah. Everybody's going to die. Everyone I know is going to die. All of these people died 2,000 years ago and longer. And it's okay. Look at the world. It just gives you the sense that life, humanity goes on. You're a piece. You have a slice right here, and that's okay. So it's a weird mindset, I know. And like you said, not everybody has that, but for me, it works. What you have, that works for you. That's all you can really say.
Yeah.
And I can understand needing that connection to maybe like your ancestors. Like I have a grandfather I never met, and the idea of being able to meet him, that was very comforting to me. So I don't know if I still probably have those thoughts, but I kind of don't really care to try and figure that out right now. Like I'm just very accepting to whatever happens. And it's a tricky one. But it is interesting that they did encompass this as a type of awe, that death and awe are actually related. So you actually have this oxytocin, this feeling of connection. And I know for me, one funeral that we had to go to, because it was, a law enforcement military sort of thing, it was televised. And so there was, the firemen's trucks, and then there was the giant American flag hanging down from the trucks. And then we were all marched in, and there's snipers on the roofs because there was a security issue. And so it was just this very terrifying and emotional and tragic event. And yet I can't describe that feeling. I don't want to say it was joy, but it was definitely the oxytocin. It was that connectedness, and watching the widow be handed that flag, that gets me every time. I'm overwhelmed with emotion. I'm just crying, and so those feelings do exist, and there is some oxytocin released. But I do think we need to be careful. And I do think we weren't taught boundaries, and we also were not taught how to grieve. And we were not taught how to be vulnerable. And I think the bravest thing to me now, going through tragedies or death, is being brave enough to grieve. And I think that's what we don't do in Mormonism. They stop you and say, explain this, because if you are feeling the horrible feelings of grief, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah, remember President Nelson?
You don't have faith.
Yes.
Yeah, remember how he sort of made fun of his, I think it was granddaughter-in-law whose dad had died, and he said, "You're so myopic. If you understood it, you wouldn't cry a second." And there's that belief, like my mom, she died a year ago, and she fully believed, and so did my dad, that all the people they had done genealogy for would meet them, hundreds of thousands of people. As soon as she closed her eyes and died, she'd be surrounded by 100,000 people that were thanking her because, she had done their work for, and that was her belief. It didn't happen, but she slipped into her final, into the great abyss, believing that. But I think that death is the ultimate unknown, and that's why it's considered awe, and that's okay. I mean, that's, I think, the best way to look at it. But I understand it's a fraught topic. But yeah, in Mormonism, they certainly have it locked down. And I've heard a lot of post-Mormons say, now that I'm on the other side of Mormonism, I need to re-grieve. I didn't grieve for my mother because they all told me, why? You'll see her in the blink of an eye, and she's doing missionary work right now, and she's happy. Why aren't you? So on the other side, they're like, no, I'm going to take a day and I'm going to re-grieve for this person. One of the greatest traditions I ever heard, because Mormons don't have great traditions around death. And this was a friend of mine. I don't even know what religion she was, but she said, at this point in her life, she was older. She would just get a note that a friend had died, something like that. She doesn't live in the same place, and she would hear through the grapevine or get a letter, someone has died. She said, I would take a candle and I would light it at the beginning of the day, and I would keep it lit all day long for that person. And every time I walked past the room where the candle was, I would think about the person. I would take a half an hour and sit by the candle and think about that person, and do that just sort of as a memory, a send off, right? From far away. I thought that is amazing. That is true grieving, true thinking about the person, and way more than what you're going to find in a Mormon funeral. So I don't know. It's a hot button for me for sure. It really is.
No, I agree with you. I think there's some really messed up psychological stuff that
Yeah.
we do.
Yep.
Absolutely. And our funerals are co-opted by the bishop.
Yeah.
They have to make it a church meeting.
Yeah, it's a
and
church meeting.
teach the gospel.
Yeah, people
and the
don't
whole
know
thing.
that. If you look in the
Instead
handbook,
of-
it's a church meeting.
It's a church meeting instead of what it should be, which is eulogizing the person who has passed. They have to hijack it. But I will say that I think one of the parts that is connective about it is that the surviving people we're all suffering together in the loss of this person. And there's this feeling of support and love, and like it's a bonding experience for a family to lose someone together, and so I think in a way it's very healthy time where everyone can get together and reminisce and grieve together. That's healing.
Yeah,
and we should do it and not be told, why are you grieving? You have so little faith. No,
myopic.
you're supposed to grieve.
No, and you also have to think that, you have to give the person the kind of funeral they would have wanted, right? Like both my parents passed away within the last 2 years. They wanted an LDS funeral. That's what they wanted. That's what all their relatives wanted, and I remember there was a moment where, the casket, the viewing, and my sister, it's just me and my sister, she starts covering my mom's face with the veil, right? Because that's what they do. They're in their temple clothes. And I don't think you don't have to do it anymore. They stopped that practice. And so my sister started to do that. And I said, did she want that? Did she specifically tell you she wanted that, about my mom? And my sister said, yeah, she did. And I said, all right, then I don't want to be the one that does it, but she wanted it. And so that's what we're going to do, Now my concern is that my family is going to do that to me. So if any of you happen to be at my funeral, please don't, this is a big concern for a lot of post-Mormons. How do I protect what I want without pitting children against each other, telling the post-Mormon children, I want this. And then they, it's a real concern, but you should respect what the person would have wanted, and you should just go with that. That's what it should be.
Write it down and give it to an attorney.
Yeah. Seriously.
Have them hold it.
I'm just saying. Yeah.
Yeah, and I say just do it. And I do have to give my dad credit. He was a bishop several years ago, and he had like 9 deaths in his first year. I mean, bless the man. I know. We called him, instead of Grim Reaper, we called him the Grim Bishop. But
poor guy.
Shocker. I know. But you know what? I think he did a really good job, that he did make it about healing and the family and what the person wanted. He wasn't a super preachy, like, this is all about Jesus and you shouldn't feel pain and nothing. So I think there is some leeway there, but I think we need to recognize that not grieving is not a sign of faith. That is a sign of kind of emotional immaturity. Like you need to let that in, and you need to grieve, because it will stay in your mind and in your body somewhere. And then hurt people. You may end up mistreating someone because you never grieved. You just really don't know. So, and I think sometimes that's what we see in church members. Right? They're hurting, and so then they hurt other people. Anyway, the advice in some of this research to remember during death, and I thought these were good points, is be present, listen, keep breathing, be open to the suffering and also to the kindness. And whether you're the person grieving or the person supporting, I think both, I just think that's a very beautiful thing. And it would be good for us to, inside and outside of the church, maybe embrace more of those behaviors. All around a much healthier opportunity. And then you'll have the awe. So the results of all 8 types of these awe, when you have them in your life, are basically you're just more open-minded. You're connected to yourself, to other people, to your community, to the world, to life, to everything. And you also have pro-social behaviors. And I think we could all use a little bit of that. So it's just good things. So I just liked this book. I like this whole notion I thought it was really great that it is something that can promote happiness. And I do think leaving the church leaves a void of that. So it's worth talking about that you do need to have these pursuits. You're allowed to have them, and they're not specific. The world is your oyster. Figure out what works for you. But you do deserve to have that in your life because you, in turn, will then go out in the world and probably be kinder to other people. You take care of yourself, you're going to be able to take care of other people. So, um, yeah. Oh, yes. My favorite slide. Have you done your shots of awe today?
I love it. That is
So you can
perfect.
either be in your bikini drinking tea, or you can do
Yeah.
shots of oxytocin and find what makes you happy. And I love to end these with "In the name of the Good Book Club."
Amen.
Amen.
That's right. So, no, and this is such a perfect book to represent what the Good Book Club is because it has nothing to do with Mormonism. It's not connected to Mormonism at all. But as we all discussed it there and then discussing it now, it's through our lens, which is, decades in the LDS church. And then you kind of spin it, synthesize it through that. And then you come out with something that really meant something to you and something that you learned personally. So that's what I love. But I'll put the link in the show notes to this book. I would recommend it to anybody, especially I think around the holidays. I think it's going to be good. Maybe, you know what? Give it out as a Christmas gift, right? There's an idea. Get people thinking. So there are those books that you're like, yeah, I can kind of give a little jab right there. This book looks innocent, but it has some really good points in it that somebody might learn something from. So yeah, this was just fantastic. Any final thoughts, Lila? This has been amazing.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. No, I just think it's been a good conversation. Very important things to think about. Something I haven't really thought about for, not specifically. So it's been a good mental exercise.
Yep. That's what I think too. That's what books are about, and when we started the Good Book Club, it was like, okay, how can we explore everything we've missed or everything that we might be interested in? We don't have that much time. And by reading is really how you can do it. You can pick up a book about Stoicism and say, is this for me? Or pick up a book about Buddhism or a book about astronomy, and you can just discover and learn everything very quickly and then kind of figure out. I think our catchphrase is, now that we don't know what we don't believe, let's figure out what we do believe. And that can be by reading, or I would add watching podcasts, right? A lot of people say I consume so many podcasts when I'm trying to figure things out, and I just stepped away. And that's what it's all about, listening to other people, learning from their points of view, taking in just incredible amounts of information, right? It's just kind of what we do when we're trying to reinvent ourselves, which often leads people to say to you, you're completely different. Have you guys heard that from anybody? You're so different from how you used to be, right? And I don't know. I think that's probably a good thing. Maybe finding your real self. Maybe that's what it's all about. Yeah, it was good. Any other final thoughts, Steph? Or I think we'll wrap up. This has been amazing. You are a fantastic presenter. We're so glad that you went out of your comfort zone and said, I'll sign up, right?
Well, thanks. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. And it was good for me. There's been a cognitive revolution with the internet. We have all this history and information, and that helped explain so many things. And now we're kind of having this social emotional revolution where we're learning about things like awe that are so hard to describe. And so, yeah, I love the gift that I can give people grace that maybe they are still in the church. And I'm like, you know what? If that's how you get your shot of oxytocin, go ahead. Like, I get it now. I can let that go. Like, I can preserve my peace, and I'm okay with yours too. So avoid the family fights at Thanksgiving. Like, it'll be great.
Unless, like we were talking about before, the meme that said, make sure to bring up politics and religion at Thanksgiving to get out of giving so many Christmas gifts, right? It's a good time to become estranged. I mean, we're kidding, of course. So well, this has been fantastic. I mean, I think I was in such awe that my set collapsed behind me. I don't know if you heard that loud noise, but I was like, I'll just keep podcasting through it. And it's kind of all cascading down now. I think it's trying to tell me that it's time to put up my Christmas set because we're getting closer to that. So I did want to bring up one thing quickly, talking about getting your awe. And that is, you guys may have heard that RFM and Bill and I are kind of hosting this post-Mormon celebration cruise. It's all the way next year. It's in September, the 10th or the 13th through the 20th. And it's going to be really fun. We just barely announced it on, gosh, like 5 days ago, and we've already booked like 20 rooms. It's kind of amazing. And we've even had people say, oh, I don't have double occupancy. I'm just alone. We started a Facebook page for people that want to try to buddy up with somebody so that it saves money to go. But anyway, the idea is just celebrate your journey, celebrate where you are now, connect with other post-Mormons, and let's just do it in the sun, on the sea. So I'm going to put a link in the show notes to that in case anybody is interested. We're leaving out of LA. And like I said, it's all the way 9 months from now. We have plenty of time to go to the gym, get our tent, get ready. So I think it's going to be fun. I'm excited. Like I said, we've already had a huge response. So I will put that in the show notes if anybody is interested in, in participating or figuring out what they want to do. So all right. Well, thank both of you guys. It was absolutely amazing. And I hope all of you have been commenting. This is a really interesting topic. And like Lila said, I hadn't really thought about this. I hadn't taken time to do the mental work to think about this. And now that I have, I think I may have picked up some ideas of how to feel better, how to be better, which is kind of what it's all about. So I hope you guys have too. And tell us in the comments what this conversation meant to you, and give us some examples of the kind of awe that you guys find, because I always love to hear what other people do. Please like and subscribe to Mormonish Podcast. And if you'd like to be made aware of when new episodes come out, you can hit the notification bell. If you would like to make an end of the year donation to Mormonish Podcast, I know it's getting to that time where we're like, oh, we got to do our charitable contributions. We are a nonprofit and we have links in the show notes, and we absolutely appreciate everybody that does donate to Mormonish. It really helps us a lot. It gives us awe, and we love all you guys. You're amazing. We also have links in the show notes to our merch store where you can grab some Mormonish merch. And again, thank you, Lila, for last minute popping in. You were an amazing addition to the show. And thank you, Stephanie. And we will see everybody else next time on Mormonish. Bye, everybody.